Welcome back to the IYWi interview series where we explore recovery, connection, and the conversations that help people build meaningful and lasting sobriety. Today, I am joined by Tracy Viola, who's the author of Pretty Wrecked, a very inspiring memoir that was actually given to me from my mom when I was going through some of the darker phases of my struggles. So really cool to have this opportunity today, Tracy, and kind of see it come full circle.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Just give us a brief introduction of who you are, maybe a little bit about your experience, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me, Connor. I'm so glad that I believe it was your aunt. I knew somebody that knew your aunt who knew obviously your mom.
Yeah.
And then, so it's just, it's funny. The universe can work in mysterious ways. So I'm so glad you got a hold of the book.
Thank you. Yes.
So my name's Tracy. I'm an alcoholic and addict. And I'm trying to think of how to summarize, prove my reasons for being here quickly. I had a lot of shit when I was little. And here's the quick version. I had a lot of shit. It felt awful. And drugs and alcohol made it not feel awful until they became the problem.
Yep.
And here I am. But in all honesty, I had alcoholic father. His mother was alcoholic, so it runs in our family. We definitely have a genetic component. Parents divorced when I was 6. My father wasn't really around. My mother did the best she could and remarried my stepfather, who ended up really essentially being a con artist and fooling us both, and was very good at kind of dividing us and being extraordinarily cruel and scary. And I went through that between 12 to 16. I would say around 14, 15, maybe I had a sip, sneaking like sips of alcohol here and there, and smoking some cigarettes. Started to smoke cigarettes around like 15, but I wasn't really into much. And then we had a sudden move away from my stepfather, which was very traumatic. Like literally, I imagine walking off to school one morning and you come home and your whole house is gone. And that was unbelievably difficult. And I'd still say actually to this day, that's actually one of the most difficult things that happened to me. Just losing kind of everything, especially at 16 years old, you're still developing, right? Your brain is like 2/3 developed. Your stuff is so meaningful to you, right? Your clothes and your music. For me, it was like cassette tapes and VHS, and MTV and at the time. And so then I lost all of that. And also at the time, I had started to hang out with people that had access to drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening was this kind of perfect storm when I was 16 years old. I had the biological component from my father. I had the psychological component of, as I would say, and we can get into this later, but a lot of trash in the trash can, right? I had like the, divorce and neglect and abuse, the sudden move, all the stuff building up the trauma. And then I had access, right? I had the social component of I was around it. And one of these days I just finally was like, screw it. I feel like shit. And these people all look like they're having a lot of fun. And for me, that was it. I was a very quick, once I started using, I focused on getting as much drugs and alcohol as often as I could and doing the best I could to hide it. And then it escalated, it's, as I talk about in the book as well, it's a slippery slope. You start making these justifications and rationalizations and, well, that's not that bad, I'm not as bad as that person, right? Comparing yourself. I'm not as bad as them. I'm not doing that. And you make these little leaps and jumps until you are there. And, it works until it stops working.
Mm-hmm.
And it stopped working for me when I was almost 20. So it'd been about a 4-year ride, bumpy ride, where I actually graduated high school, went off to college, totally bombed because like I had so much freedom. It was like, I just got into so much trouble. My mom sent me to rehab. I came home for a Christmas. my mom sent me to rehab. I was 19, so I got to go through a withdrawal in rehab, and that sucks,
Mm.
by the way.
Yeah.
So I signed myself out because I was like, forget this, right? Like, this is not for me. And then my mom kicked me out, and then I was homeless, and I was homeless until I went through a lot more loss, and I finally I came home for a reason, and my mom basically said to me, "You're allowed to stay if you get into another program." And
Yeah.
so I agreed to start in an intensive outpatient IOP program that was near our house because I was not doing inpatient again. And that's where I really had my aha moment, if you will. I had my kind of moment of clarity. And I think it can be anything for anyone, whatever that moment is. I think that having that moment is important, not essential
Mhm.
in recovery, but important when you have that complete surrender
Yeah.
of it's not working.
Right.
Like my way is not working. And because then you can't, for me, I'll speak for myself, I couldn't look at my addiction and alcohol use the same
Right.
because I knew that had broken me.
Mhm.
And once I kind of turned that over, I became willing, right? Honest, open, and willing to do whatever I had to do to get sober
Yeah.
and change, kind of, it was like a pendulum swing. I went from like just dark addiction, alcohol use, very bad choices, very bad situations to this like, what do I have to do?
Mhm.
And amazingly, as your app says, if you work it, it works. It's funny how that is. So,
Right. 100%.
and here I am many years later. I got sober in February of 1996. So it's been over 30 years, which is pretty, even for me, I'm still like, what? you know, I don't feel that old, first of all, but also
Yeah.
it really is a miracle. And I just want, so for people, when people are newer to recovery, whether that's 2 days, 2 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, 10 years, it still is a miracle. Like I really genuinely feel so lucky, but I also still do the work.
Right.
It's
Right.
not, things change like over time, like you can, find the things that work for you and kind of, you start to kind of see what rises to the top is the best stuff for you and whatnot. But I still do the work. And that's at the end of the day, that's the key.
No, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Real quickly, just to think about that sort of aha moment you touched on, I felt like I had that a few different times because it got really bad. And, I'd wake up the next day and be like, gosh, what am I doing? But I was
Hmm.
missing that willingness that you touched on, the complete surrender. And I know, like, for myself, that was vital to even allowing myself to begin the journey of recovery. Like,
Hmm.
you got to put the whole guard down. I had to, at least, and have no reservations and just be completely willing to. For me, it was take direction. I hated listening to other people. I hated
Totally.
told what to do, and during my active addiction, that was all I was hearing from family, from friends, from people in my life. Like, this is what you need to do, and it was really difficult for me to listen to that until I had that moment where the willingness followed, directly after. Um,
Totally. Yeah. Because it's like, one of the sayings that you're familiar with, I'm sure, is like action without, or, what is it? Thought without works is dead, or,
yeah.
action without works is dead.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's very true. And you use the word willingness, and I agree with that. I think also the key word for me was responsibility,
Yes.
like truly saying, instead of like pointing the finger at everybody else, because it was everybody else's fault.
Right.
It was everybody, everything that happened was everybody else's fault.
Hmm.
And, uh, you know, once I really understood the difference between fault and responsibility, that was a big key. And it still is, in that idea that it might not have been my fault,
Hmm.
but it was my responsibility
Right.
to address what was going on. I couldn't change it, but I could take responsibility from my reaction.
Yeah, I totally relate. The accountability, the responsibility. I'm very grateful that I was able to realize that those things were going to be necessary.
Hmm.
Because I think I will just continue to find myself in those moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to stop, but I'm unwilling to take accountability or have responsibility in my life. I want to switch up a little bit here, and you were sort of talking about it, how maybe it's changed over the years for you when it comes to the work that you do to take care of your recovery. And for us at IWWi, one of our core values is connection, right? And I
Hmm.
hear all the time that connection is the opposite of addiction, and I think that's true, right, from a general perspective. And for you, looking back on your recovery journey, how has it changed in terms of maybe what connection looks like for you? I know for me, when I started, it was heavy meeting attendance. I mean, I had a ton of time. I didn't really have other responsibilities besides, going to meetings and recovery related stuff. But, recovery allowed me to get back into school, to start working, to travel, I'm pretty much in LA most of the time these days, and, going back and forth to Boston. Like, I wouldn't have my group of people in Boston, but I would have other ways to stay connected. And I'm curious for you, yeah, like, how has that changed over the 30 plus years that you've been sober?
So I definitely was a meeting makers make it
Yes.
person in the beginning, and still very much I still attend meetings, and it can vary. So now, many years later,
Yes.
it's more um kind of I can make them when I can make them. So sometimes I always say sometimes it's three in a week, sometimes it's three in a month, sometimes it's 3 in 3 months. You know what I mean? Like so it really can vary, but I l- I never leave a meeting in a worse mood.
Right.
Like there's just no such thing. And I think that connection was so important, especially in the beginning. And I would really say, I mean, for many, many years. I mean, the first 10, 15 years. I mean, it still is important now. I'm trying to and it's impossible for me to remember like, what
Right.
was it like at 15 versus 20? Because then I throw in my husband, and then I throw in my first kid and my second kid. Yeah. And and then COVID and everything gets wonky. But the key with connection, and I think it still is, it's changed, but it's similar but different, is that I had this beautiful gift of all of these people in recovery that had been there before me,
Mm.
right? I wasn't unique. I was not unique. My situation was not unique. Whatever I was going through was not unique. And I had all these people that I could ask, well, how did you do it? And the coolest thing about that was that I was like 19, 20 years old,
Mm.
and I got to learn how to human. Like I
Yeah.
got to be given a book and like really kind of like a set of instructions,
Mhm.
and then guidance from these old timers, these older people than me, to teach me how to address things and be responsible and be honest, open, willing, process things. Um, don't keep a record of wrongs, all of these gifts. And then I got to do that for other people, right? I got to like help teach other people. And now I think the coolest thing is being able to teach my kids all of the lessons I learned in AA, despite them not being in AA, but I get to teach them all those life lessons. And I still have, I mean, one of my best friends to this day was somebody I met in my first month of recovery. I
So
mean,
cool.
he's the godfather to my daughter.
So cool.
I refer to him as my bury a body friend, like the person that you just call up and be like, okay, like meet me here at 2 a.m. And you'd be like,
Yeah.
yep, like, whatever you need. And, and I'm trying to think of other people. I just went for a walk with a friend of mine who's been a friend for, again, my entire recovery. So you have these old people that know you from the beginning, but I would say that I see less people, but I have like my core people, the people that have been with me for many, many years.
Right. Yeah, I know for me that core group is so essential. I'm not as far along as you are, but I've experienced, this far, like building a lot of great relationships and a lot of them falling apart. And I think what I'm learning is that number one, not everyone's going to stay sober. I think we
No.
all get into AA. For me, I went to sober living and I met a lot of great people. And there's probably only two or three guys from that experience that are still, you know, seeing it through and
Mm-hmm.
able to be in a friendship. I know for me, when I'm drinking or when I'm not interested in being sober, like I'm not a great friend. So having that core group of people, I've met hundreds of people in LA in recovery, and I don't know what the percentage is of who stayed sober and who's still, you know,
Mm-hmm.
riding along. But yeah, that core group is essential, and I'm so grateful for those few people that I met in my first week, probably of
Yeah.
this that are still there. Hold them very close. So
And that's the key, right? And then like if you can all hold each other close and
yeah,
be your, responsible partner, right? Call me if you need anything. Call me before you pick up, but way before then. Call me when just something's going on and then they can do that for you. And it really does teach you how to express yourself. I mean, all these lessons, right? It teaches you how to like talk about your feelings and like address things right away. And my husband and I do not have an argument that lasts longer than like 24 hours. Like, cause it's like, nope, we're talking it out right now. Like I'm not gonna hold that stuff on my shoulders. I'm not gonna keep those resentments. I've been trained to just get it out
right.
anywhere. Sometimes it makes
Yeah.
our kids or people around us a little uncomfortable because I'm like, oh hell no, no, nope, I did not like that, and like we
Yeah.
talk it out. But then it's like done, and then
Right.
you're like, okay, cool, moving on.
Yeah. No, I definitely relate. I had a hard time being honest when I was drinking and in uncomfortable situations. And that's one thing that I've definitely learned and I'm continuing to get better at. But being upfront, being honest, keeping my side of the street clean, like those are
Hmm.
gifts of the program for me for sure that I'm very grateful for. So
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
sure.
I want to jump into some of the work that you're doing,
Okay.
and I'm really interested in the speaking that you do to the younger demographics.
Hmm.
I know for me in my later teenage years, early college years, I was definitely a candidate to be in recovery, but I was far from interested in
Hmm.
the idea of not drinking. Like I couldn't comprehend it; it just wasn't an option for me. I'm curious for you, what are sort of the strategies or the words, the phrasing that you use to help the younger demographic realize the reality of addiction and also how great recovery can be. Like what is that experience like for you and how do you do it?
Well, yeah, so teenagers are my favorite, and I never thought I'd say that. Um, I think very few people say, like, "I love teenagers." But I really do because that's where you can really move the needle. That's where it's like, wow, we can actually have a little prevention here possibly. That's amazing. So, first of all, I roll in and I am I try to be funny. Like I'm very self-deprecating and, tell some good stories, tell some stories that aren't in the book and they love hearing those. So it's like, oh, it's like these like inside stories and they are fun. I mean, they're funny now. They weren't funny then, but the
Or
teenagers find them funny. So first I kind of like, you know, I make them laugh. And then I try to relate and I try to say like, being a teenager is so hard, right? And you don't have control over so many situations, and that sucks. And like, I remember that. I remember being 16 and hating my stepfather and not really being able to do anything about it. And then losing our home and not being able to do anything about it and living out of a box and not being able to do anything. Like, you're just beholden to the adults in your life, and that sucks. Unless you have good adults, right? Which would be great for people, but that's not always the situation. And so I really get them to go, oh wait, I can relate to that, right? And so I use the trash can metaphor as an example to kind of ground them. And we've got so much stuff. We all have stuff. I don't care what your outsides looks like. I don't care what your filter is. We've
mm,
all got trash in the trash can, and it really hurts and it really sucks. And the great thing today for teenagers is that they do have resources available.
Mhm.
We are talking about these things more. We are addressing things faster. We have guidance counselors and therapists, and we're just so much more aware. When I got sober in 1996, we were not talking about these things. We definitely were not talking about addiction. I mean, my mom would not tell anybody that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol. It was so, embarrassing for her. So I think that that's great that we have that help. So what I talk to kids about is this idea of the trash can and not letting it build up. And that's what happened for me, right? I had all this stuff building up, and then like the drugs and alcohol put this lid on the trash can. I'd have to look at it. And then, but then while you're doing drugs and alcohol, guess what? You're throwing more trash in the trash can. You're making worse decisions. Bad things are going to happen to you. The other thing is, this isn't a new concept. They know that. They know that this isn't the right decision, right? And then we talk about slippery slope, right? Like how you're going to make these decisions, and then you make one decision and another decision, and you're around people that are doing it. The quote that I use that kids seem to like is, if you hang out with a bunch of swimmers, eventually you're jumping in the fucking pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're jumping in the pool. Like,
Mm.
and I always say, I'm not trying to judge your friends. I'm just letting you know, if you hang out with a bunch of swimmers, you're jumping in the pool.
Yeah.
You will. So you just think about that. And what I really do is I try to present things as information. I'm trying to give you information for you to make a choice. I am not going to tell you yes or no. I cannot tell you yes or no. Besides, if somebody had told me no, that's the first thing I'm going to go do as a teenager. I'd be like, oh, well, watch me, right? So I just give them information, and then I give them a choice. And the choice that I give them after I kind of like start to summarize it and give them information, right? I'm just going to and I say, like, let me go through the boring statistics. Just bear with me. I have to say them, and then I make them kind of fun as well. But I go over the statistics of addiction and, alcoholism and fentanyl and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talk about this idea of yellow light. And I just say, all I'm asking for is 3 seconds. I want you to think, when you're in this situation, whether it's drugs or alcohol or relationship or sex or a fight, right? You want to get into a fight with someone, you're angry, like whatever it is. First of all, what probably the right decision is to make. But just 3 seconds. Is this decision going to move me closer to my goals, closer to my idea of what I want my life to look like or think where I'm going? Or is it going to move me farther away?
Right.
And you don't have to get every decision right. You're not going to get every decision right. I don't get every decision right, but you need to get more right than wrong.
Right.
And the hope is that once they realize that they can say no, that they do have a control over those choices, that they do have a control over this idea of moving forward versus backwards, that feels good.
100%.
And so then you make better choices. You just continue. It's like kind of like you build momentum, right? It's like a train. You just build this momentum of like, I can do that. And it seems to work, not for everybody. And I'm not like a miracle worker, but I will tell you, I had the coolest experience hanging out with my daughter and a bunch of her friends. And I said something, and one of her friends, because I've spoken at my daughter's school, she's very cool about letting me speak, because I think she's like, you are actually mildly funny. So like, you're not embarrassing. So, um, she lets me speak. And one of her friends, we were talking about something, and her one friend goes, oh, like yellow light, right? Like pause and think. I was like, did you just repeat something I said in like March? Like, you remembered?
Yeah.
And that was honestly, the fact that she remembered yellow light and was able to apply it to a situation was like, oh my God, that's like magic. So I'm grateful. I want to be in front of more teenagers. I tell schools, you got to let me do my thing. You're just gonna have to trust me and like, let me come in and say my stuff. I do curse. I am honest. I will answer their questions 100% honest. I've had people ask me like, what does crack look like? What is this like? And I tell them completely honest answers, because, well, I'm sorry, by not telling them, do you think they're not going to do it? Like, we've learned that's not true. So most schools are scared of parents. It's not the kids that are the problem, it's the parents. And so they don't want to get a phone call from a parent like, I heard someone came in and talked about crack.
Right. Right.
So I'd love to get in front of more teenagers. They're my favorite people.
Yeah, no, I could have definitely gotten a lot out of hearing you speak when I was at that age, and definitely when I was going through what I was going through. I Something you said about the statistics, that was I heard so many statistics, and you look to your left, you look to your right, only one of you is going to make it. Like that always rubbed me the wrong way, and I
Hmm.
always felt like it was just being preached time after time, no matter who it was, and it didn't feel good at all. Like
No
to hear that, I wanted to hear like what you were saying, like
stories. Yeah.
the stories and the personal experience, and just whatever you were just doing, like that would have worked for me.
Yeah.
It would have helped. It
Oh,
would have something different. Which
exactly. And I think that's what I think people are like, oh, that was different. Like, I was
yeah,
not expecting to hear that.
yeah,
And, and when I wrote Pretty Wrecked, when I wrote my book, I didn't have teenagers in mind, which is really funny. I didn't know what I had in mind. I just felt like a calling to do this. And I
oh,
really had a calling to write the book as vignettes
mhm,
because people love stories. People remember stories. They don't remember statistics, right? They don't remember statistics. They
no,
remember stories. So I thought, well, what if I told my story as stories, as kind of like the descent into my alcoholism and addiction through these stories as I got worse and worse, right? The slippery slope, and then tell my recovery through stories
right,
about, how I got sober and how I started to apply all of those annoying signs on the walls in
mhm,
AA meetings, right? You read them and you're like, these are dumb as shit. And then you're like, oh my God, they actually work. They're true. So I told my recovery as a series of stories of how I actually applied all the things I learned in recovery in real life, in
right,
relationships, in my job, in my parenting, all of those things.
yeah. The stories. I remember going to AA for the first time, and I mean, I didn't want to be there at all, but I found some sort of comfort in the stories when it was a speaker meeting, someone sharing their experience, strength, and hope. Like
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that, and this last time when I was actually interested in going to AA, like I just loved it. Like I couldn't wait to get to a meeting, to see people, to hear a story and be able to relate to it and find strength in it, hope in it, whatever it was. And yeah, I mean, I think that's just such a powerful way of spreading the good word
Yeah.
of recovery, and really letting people understand where you're coming from. And
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the oldest thing in the world, right? Is we didn't have paper and pens and language. We had stories.
right,
So I think there's something intrinsic in us that is very, drawn to storytelling.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, I usually end these interviews with asking the question: is there a certain recovery quote, metaphor? You shared a lot of great ones with us. I don't know if there's a one you haven't shared with us yet that you'd like to leave us with, or maybe just reinforce something that you already said. But I'd love to hear that recovery quote, phrase, metaphor, whatever it is.
Sure. So it kind of my favorite one kind of relates to yellow light,
Yep.
which is that kind of pause, right? That thinking about it. And my favorite quote is "Make the next right decision."
Yes.
I call that being a nerd. NERD. So next right R decision D. So be a nerd. And it's just it's a catchphrase that hopefully people can remember. And again, I don't always make the next right decision, but more often than not, I do. And it's a muscle. Decision making is a muscle. And the, the more you do it and the more you make the next right decision, the more you want to make the next right decision because you see the results.
Mhm.
And sometimes I just also want to say, sometimes the next right decision is doing nothing. Sometimes the next right decision is rest. Sometimes the next right decision is, just I need to not today. I need to read a book, and that's okay. Like I think we are in such a swipe next, what, go, 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 go society now. And there is such growth that happens in the stop. So
Mhm.
sometimes the next right decision is less, do less. But yeah, it's really, I mean, when I think about the moment I said, okay, what do I need to do to get sober? All right, I'm in, to today. it's always been make the next right decision.
Make the next right decision. I love
Hmm.
that. And it works if you work it. That
It
would be
works if you work it. Yeah.
that kind of ties it all in. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. Is there a place people can find your book, or is there anything you want to
Yeah.
shout out about the work you're doing before
Of
we?
course, of course. So you can reach me at Tracy Viola Author. That's tracyviolaauthor.com. That's on Instagram. That's on Facebook. So my name, TracyViolaAuthor. So Tracy Viola Author. I will admit I'm terrible about social media. So just apologize. Feel free to DM me if I don't get back to you for a few days, just because I really don't look at it all the time. My book here, I'll hold up an image of
Yeah,
it. So here's Pretty Wrecked.
there it
My
is.
book is available on Amazon, and it's paperback, Kindle, ebook, audiobook. The best audiobook is on Spotify. I think it's like the cheapest. Anyway, so it's available in all formats, and yeah, I'd love more teenagers to be reading it. It's fun. So if this is going out there to young people, I always say, like, let this be your free read, right? Like, because during summertime, like, you have like your 2 or 3 required readings,
Yep.
and then you have like a free read. I'm always like, free read. Like, I
Okay.
promise you're gonna go through it so quickly,
Love
because
it.
it's vignettes. So before you know it, you're like, oh my God, I just read like 50 pages.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, yeah,
Yes.
definitely. You got to go check out that book for sure.
Thank you.
It's a good one, and thank you so much once again, Tracy. This
Of
was
course. And thank you for all that you're doing. It's so, well, I mean, we haven't talked about your app much, but I love this idea of the time between the meetings, right? And having, accountability and connection and communication and all of that stuff is just so important, because the meeting, what's the metaphor I use for this? The meeting is putting on the sneakers. Like, if you think of it like exercise, right? The meeting is putting on the sneakers, but the rest of the day is the run. And that's where the change happens, is in the
again.
run. It's not just in putting on the sneakers. But so thank you for helping people run throughout the
Uh,
day.
that's the goal. I love the way you just framed that. That's amazing, and that's what we're looking to do, right? The meeting is great, and I've met a
Yeah.
lot of great people at those meetings, and I want to stay connected with them for as long as I can, and we're hoping to solve that problem. So, um, yeah,
Awesome.
but
Keep it up.
perfect. All right, thanks, Tracy.
Thank you so much.